I like your hair. I feel like I could tell the weather based on your hair.
You can. I mean, when I woke up this morning, it was yesterday's hair. It was just like a complete afro buzz.
But now it's got drier and it cooled off.
Well,
it got straighter.
I had a shower because I thought I cannot be on Mika's video looking like this.
So this new concept of mine of talking to famous musicians needs a name. And since you're a genius with titles, I thought that you could help me. My mother suggested schmusic, or someone else said schmusicking. I thought Mika's musings, or I like Autour de la flûte, and this is the flute. But
I'm supposed to have a glass of bubbly. Is that right?
Yep. We're meeting autour de la flûte, autour d'une flûte de champagne.
And I actually have one.
Okay.
Should I go get it?
Yes, go get it.
Okay.
Where did you go? Did you go to the store?
I couldn't reach it. It was too high, so I had to go get the ladder.
I told you not to go up on ladders.
So, because I don't drink, we could use the tiny little one.
Mine's pink.
And I have...
Hi, I'm Mika Putterman. I'm the founder and artistic director of Autour de la flûte, and today we meet autour d'une flûte, but a champagne flute instead of a instrument flute. And I'm really excited to welcome my guest today, dear friend and colleague, Susie Napper, who needs no introduction. Cheers, Susie.
Cheers.
So did you think of a name while you were gone?
Well, I mean, I need to know more about it.
Okay. I know so many interesting people. Musicians are such interesting people. And I thought it would be fun to just show, so because we perform, I want to show musicians who they are when they're not performing, and hobbies and interests. And
let me interview you.
Oh, wait, did you cut your own bangs?
Yeah, completely hopeless. It's so hard.
Oh, great. I cut my own bangs too. I cut my hair now. I do my own cuts. That was my pandemic.
How does it look at the back? Who cares?
Well, yeah, video is only in the front.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm only seen on video now, so I don't need the back of my hair to be nice.
Exactly.
But I do want to talk. I want to tell you how I'm going over how we met, or when I met you.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you when you asked me about my fringe. Right, and just finishing the hair. I used to be shaved here, but
oh yeah, it grows. No. Your hair grows fast. Yeah. Yes, you're not going to shave it anymore underneath? That's over?
I'm just trying to decide.
It's the end of an era.
That's the end of an era, really.
Because you shaved it when Bruce died, and so now it's 10 years.
That's exactly 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so my question for you is, why did we meet? How on earth did we meet? I have no recollection.
I remember everything. So first of all, I was 18 years old when I discovered that the concept of early music exists. And I went to 2 concerts at the Maison de la Culture here in NDG, near the fire station there, on Ducarry.
Yeah.
I took my mom and we went to see, I saw you and Margaret playing. And I said, see, Mom, they're doing this thing on different instruments. And my mom said, no, those aren't professionals.
Oh, no. It was that bad?
It wasn't the level. It was just the fact that it was something different. And the other concert was recorder and harpsichord, so that was my mom's notion of recorder was that it was not a professional instrument. That was then. That was a long time ago. It was before early music was really popularized or mainstream enough for it to come into our living rooms, right? But I would say that
that's exactly the way my parents regarded early music. I mean, Bach was acceptable, but Monteverdi was just off. And I kept, when I was 8 years old, I kept talking about Monteverdi.
at 8 years old, but how did you discover it? Like, where did you hear it?
BBC Radio.
Ah. And there were some early music groups exploring. They would dress up too in costume, and they would explore old instruments.
You have a very different perspective from me because I grew up in London, which of course was far hipper and far ahead. No, they were not wearing funny costumes. They were more likely in jeans or some floppy outfit, hippie outfits.
Hippies, yeah.
In the 60s. I mean, long before you were born.
Yeah. And then, so I saw you at that concert. It stuck in my brain. And then I played with you with Arion. It was a concert. It was the Bach A major mass with Hervé Niquet conducting. You played in that. So I knew who you were personally then. And that must have been in 1997 or 98, something like that.
Okay.
Then in 2003, I moved to Montreal. And I was speaking with another musician saying I wanted to play with someone, but who would play for free? And right away that person said, well, Susie will play for free.
Because I come cheap.
She'll play through stuff with you. She's the only like professional who will give you the time of day. So I came over to your house and we played through De Vienne. Yeah. And that was it. Then we were friends.
And did you bring your doggy?
For that rehearsal, probably not. I was nervous for the playthrough. I was nervous. Bruce was there. No, he wasn't there that day. Once I met Bruce after a concert in Montreal when I was still living in Europe, and I didn't know that Bruce lived in Montreal. And he had come to Belgium, to Brussels, to give a seminar when I was a student. And I didn't know that he lived here.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So that was funny. Yeah, so that's how we met. And then, so if I moved here in 2003, you remember you came to my birthday party, my 30th birthday party on McNider? I had this big
Yes,
bath.
I think I remember.
And then we connected more personally when we talked about our birth stories. Well, you told me about your birth stories before I was even pregnant. I was so interested in natural birth, and then finding out that you birthed with the maestro of midwives, Michel Audin.
For my third birth, yes.
Third birth. And then we connected over our shared stories of a painful first birth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we certainly had a lot in common with those first births, although in some ways yours seemed a lot worse than mine.
Oh, to me, yours seemed worse than mine. But also, we birthed the same number of times. I just got one extra kid.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Because I have a 2-for-1. I remember when I was giving birth.
I feel cheated.
You were cheated.
I was cheated.
Separate. And I have more girls than you. I've got 3 girls.
Right.
You only have 1. Well, even more sweet boys. So you drove around.
The birthing, and then I looked after your doggy. What was his name?
Koji.
Koji, of course.
You looked after Koji. That must have been before kids because we traveled. So you had to take the dog.
No, it was after kids because Koji wouldn't stop yapping. And I mean, Koji went through a psychological breakdown with the competition that arrived.
That's right. Yeah, he barked. He never barked before, and then he started
And
barking.
then it was terrible.
Yeah.
And he
Peed
did
all over
his
your house.
feet all over the house.
Yeah, I know.
Poor
I remember
Koji.
I felt guilty giving you Koji to look after a bit, but between all of you, I think it was okay. So when I was giving birth, you drove around, you left grapes at my doorstep, I remember.
Oh,
Yeah, you left me a fruit basket. And then I ended up in the hospital, so that was
terrible.
yeah.
Do you realize that today we couldn't leave anything at the front door? We would be invaded by
Well,
squirrels,
have times changed?
whatever.
You think there are more squirrels now than there were 14 years ago?
Absolutely.
Oh, I never realized that.
And I didn't see raccoons or skunks
We had
down to
raccoons.
and now I see them all the time.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Well, they're not afraid anymore, like that bear.
And rats, I see rats, at night running this.
Groundhogs, tons of groundhogs.
I don't know what a groundhog looks like.
Looks like a beaver without a tail. And maybe smaller than a beaver. They're cute. I saw a groundhog with 4 babies.
Oh, I don't think then I've seen a groundhog here.
I think you need grass for groundhogs.
Okay, right, and that's not much grass down.
They'll dig holes. But
okay,
this is getting boring. We need to keep it interesting.
Okay. I think wild animals are fascinating. Come on.
So then.
And then what happened? We actually play together?
Then the Baroque Festival, the first year that I moved, happened, and I volunteered for you a bit, helped you out. And I played in one little thing. And then we played.
And what do you remember about that?
I remember I was in one of the Bach cantatas. I remember Eric telling me to play softer. So I stopped playing. And then he said, Mika, softer. But I hadn't played. I remember that. I love those moments. I remember those when the conductor is in a state and you just don't play, and then they still accuse you of playing badly.
You're right.
And then what do I remember about that? Oh, I remember something else about you. I remember after Masahiro Arita came to play with Arion, and I listened to that concert. I went to the rehearsal, I went to the concert, and then you invited everyone back to your house for sushi that you made. That was probably the first time I was at your house.
Okay.
That was before I moved to Europe. I was still a student. Yeah.
And
how did you do all that?
Masahiro was probably staying here, I imagine.
He stayed with you? How did you serve sushi to like 70 people after a concert that you played? Well, first of all,
and to an eminent Japanese musician. That's
gutsy.
Oh, I was very bold, I guess.
Was it fish?
Was it fish? Probably it was a mixture.
You actually made your own sushi. I don't think you made sushi. I haven't ever had your sushi since then. Do you?
I have made sushi a few times. And now that sometimes I have Japanese people staying here, I've taken to making, wonderful fusion things.
Yeah, because I don't know if they want to eat Japanese food when they're out of Japan visiting other countries.
So I remember when was that? In 1989, touring in Japan with Bruce, and my youngest Jake was 8 months old. And what was I going to say?
Eating sushi outside of Japan. So they served you hamburgers because you were from Canada.
That's right. So we stayed with one of Bruce's students in his traditional paper house. And they bought a bread machine, especially because we were coming. That's right. So every morning there was white Wonder Bread, and we could smell it baking. And of course, they were eating these wonderful rice cake things. And somehow we had to let them know that we really didn't want Wonder Bread with margarine and red jam and coffee. So finally, they allowed us to eat what they ate, which was fabulous.
Oh, yeah,
These rice gluten things.
Yeah, so funny.
With soy sauce and beautiful tea.
I did that to my grandmother when she came to visit me in Paris. My mother and I thought, okay, let's give her the most familiar food possible. So what does my grandmother eat? Like chicken soup and
right.
Jewish, Polish food. So we took her to Le Roi du Pot au Feu, which is like the closest thing to chicken soup. And she was so depressed. She didn't eat anything. And then one night we went to some fancy French restaurant and she was in heaven.
Of course.
Why do we think that people want to eat what's familiar? It's funny. But you, really what I want to talk about, oh yeah, cheers more, is you have the best stories because you met so many interesting people your whole life, but even as a young child, interesting musicians. And tell me a bit again about growing up and the music circle.
Well, I mean,
father.
when I think about growing up, you know, I lived in another era, obviously, but I mean, spectacularly another era in terms of the household. And
like Downton Abbey. You saw electricity for the first time.
I saw running water for the first time. But it was the very end of the era of households with staff. And
still were some, because after the war it lingered. There was still staff, just reduced staff.
And the interesting thing about the staff was that they were basically elderly people, still what they called in service.
Yeah.
And they'd done that all their lives, and that was they were proud of their profession, and they worked for a family. And you know, so there was the chauffeur and the nanny and the cleaning lady and the butler.
You had a butler.
And the gardener who lived in a little house on the property, and his wife, who was Belgian and a wonderful cook also.
A chef, so you had a cook, not a chef.
But a chef, she was the sous chef. She helped my mother.
Yeah, because your mother was unusual that she cooked. She didn't have to. She could have had someone cook for her, but she actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, she was very much interested, and she was taught to cook. She was American, and she was taught to cook by their black servant in her house in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Did she
cook
that background? She was American? Like, would her other friends have not cooked and viewed it as, oh, that's very American of you to be in the kitchen? Or
you mean her English friends?
Yeah.
No, I mean, it was we were unusual.
Yeah. And it was her love of cooking more than it was anything else.
The reason she cooked, it was her love of cooking. Yeah. And so, you know, she took, I remember her taking courses in the Cordon Bleu for years.
Oh. And she let you in the kitchen?
Yeah. No, that's where I learned to cook. And that's why. And, you know, we went on these wonderful gastronomic tours of France. Oh. So, you know, we drive from Michelin 3-star to Michelin 3-star.
So she formed, you know, they made sure you formed your palate appropriately.
Of course.
You wouldn't do with anything less than.
And of course,
Sure.
you know, I mean, even our nanny cooked us porridge in the morning with what we call then double cream
Yeah.
and brown sugar. God, was that good.
Did the staff live on your property or with you or
Sorry?
not? Where did the staff live?
The gardener's wife lived on the property, but otherwise everyone lived elsewhere.
They didn't. And the nanny too? She would just come in the morning and leave at
She
night?
would come every morning.
Did she have a uniform?
No,
No.
but she wore an apron.
Did the butler have a uniform? Did he wear
The butler had a white jacket and a black bow tie. And the funny thing was that my mother would do the cooking and then rush into the living room and sit down in order for Dario to
bring it in?
To march into the room and say that dinner is served. And then it was the height of absurdity.
Did you have to change for dinner?
Did I have what?
Change for dinner?
We didn't change for dinner unless there were guests. If there were guests, wow. My mother would change at least. Oh. So that was, it's a very odd childhood. But, talking about music, my father had wanted to be a pianist, but his father had forbidden him because they were a poor Jewish family in the East End. I mean, they had no money, and his father suspected that you actually needed money to create a career as a concert pianist. So my father didn't go to university or anything. He articled to a lawyer when he was 7.
Without university.
You didn't go to university in those. I mean, it was a craft. You learned it on the job. So he started out as the delivery boy, and he delivered on bicycle all over London. Wow. And within 10 years, he was a partner.
Amazing.
And owned
was he a good pianist?
He was an excellent pianist.
He had lessons?
Throughout my childhood, I mean, he practiced, 2 or 3 hours before leaving for the office in the morning.
Wow.
And then 2 or 3 hours every evening.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, he was really a serious musician.
Wow. He had taken lessons?
Yeah. Yeah, he took lessons for my entire upbringing.
Oh, he took lessons even as an adult?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, he played the entire sort of central repertoire, all of Chopin, all the Beethoven sonatas.
Did you take piano lessons too?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you had to take piano lessons. And yeah. when and how did you choose cello? Was it your choice?
No, it was chosen for me. So I started piano lessons when I was 6. And
your brother played piano too?
My mother played a little piano.
And your brother?
But she learned to play the viola. So.
Oh, your mother played the viola. She learned as an adult?
Yeah.
Oh. Was she good?
No, I don't think so. I can't remember.
Did your brother have to take lessons too?
He had to take violin lessons.
So how come cello?
Well, I mean, if one plays the violin, the other has to play the cello, right? I mean, what's the choice? You're not going to choose flute, right?
Flute's is not serious enough.
It's not serious.
No.
I mean, I also played the recorder from the age of 6 or 7.
Yeah, but that's really not. That's a toy.
That's a toy. And it's interesting because when I stopped the piano at age 10, it was because the teacher said I had no talent. But the thing was, I was playing Bach preludes and fugues, Mozart sonatas. I mean, if any of our kids had played Bach preludes and fugues and Mozart sonatas at age 10,
you would be putting them on display.
Exactly.
So
It's
what
so
was that about? What was it about? You weren't a
I suspect that that piano teacher had, he was a young professional and that he had no experience. He didn't understand that a child who can, play real music is unusual. I mean, maybe not, a prodigy, but I mean, at least should be encouraged.
and
And,
but did you like the piano?
no, I mean, no, I didn't.
Mm.
I mean, my first teacher
Maybe
would,
you were a bad student. Maybe
maybe
you
I
were
was, well, I
bad.
think, I mean, my first teacher, I remember she had a ruler and she hit my hands if I didn't look at the music, and I couldn't read music. I was dyslexic. I did everything by
Oh,
ear,
gosh,
but I
wow.
had to keep my eyes on the music.
Oh,
I mean, things were so different then. It's so appalling.
yeah. And to
So
think
then,
through
and
abuse like that, you still persist. That's what's amazing. Didn't turn
but
you off.
then the unencouraged recorder. I remember when I left the school where I was learning recorder, the teacher was in tears because I was her only student playing Handel sonatas and
Wow.
etc. Real music,
Yeah.
and I had no idea, if it was good or bad. I loved playing Handel and Vivaldi, and
Yeah.
it was really great. But I don't think my parents even knew what I was doing.
So tell me about your first cello teacher, though. How old were you when they put you in cello?
I was 8, and I think Miss Ebsworth was my brother's violin teacher, I think. So I went to her class, and it was the best training because I played, at least for a year, I think I just played open strings accompanying the violin students.
Oh,
And I knew where to change open strings, and that's just the best way of learning to play continuo, actually.
yeah, learning harmony.
Learning harmony and learning to control the bow.
Yeah. What was the age difference?
And it was so beautiful. It's so beautiful,
It,
having the music go on over
it
these
is
beautiful
beautiful. Yeah.
open strings.
Yeah. Because you can make it resonate because it was, you can play with the resonance. And kids, of course,
And
love
you have the feeling that you're actually playing this great music.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the age difference with your brother?
Oh, a year. We were very close.
Very close. Was he good?
He is a really good musician. Subsequently, he became a good keyboard player, but played accordion. That was his thing. And he did that professionally for several years, I think, playing in the underground and the tube trains.
You can make a lot of money like that.
Right, exactly.
And at least in Paris, you can.
Well, I mean, and certainly, he was playing, a real piano music, great piano music
On the accordion? Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. And so, you wonder, how much of talent is just being surrounded by so much music at a young age, and how much is it genetic?
Well, I mean, it clearly helps to be surrounded by music. And, it wasn't just our lessons or my father playing the piano. There was music. There were musicians all over the house because my father was a successful businessman and lawyer. And he supported musicians, especially young pianists. So they were around the house all the time and trying out stuff. And, one of the 2 Steinways in the house. And
I mean, that's the cultural difference that we completely don't have now. Live music just for the sake of live music coming into the house. Just
Yeah,
who goes around and plays like that for the love
yeah.
of music at a professional level too. We're not talking just amateurs. Yeah, so tell me more about the guests you had, because you had some famous guests. Your
Well, I
dad.
mean, my father was a great supporter of musicians, and he put on concert series in London. And who do I remember? I remember, well, Menuhin was Yehudi Menuhin was a neighbor.
Did he hear your brother play?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in those days, the boys went off to boarding school.
But he was already famous, Yehudi Menuhin.
Yeah. And
Did he hear you play?
I don't remember ever playing. I played for Casals when I was 8 years old.
8 years old.
And I remember what he said. No, I must have been 10. I must have been 10 because I started at 8. Yes, I was 10. And, I played a couple of movements of solo Bach. And what he told me was still so relevant. He said, the hardest thing is on the cello is to put down in first position your fourth finger. So just the normal position. He said, he said, every morning, that's what I do. I just put down, I take my hand off, I put down my hand in first position. So I've always thought of that. That's just a really excellent piece of advice.
Yeah. How come he came over to your house, or?
No, we went to Zermatt, where he had in Switzerland, where he had a masterclass, and I played in his masterclass.
Wow.
And I think there's a photo of me with him. And
So you were sort of used to, at a young age, being surrounded by famous music.
Yeah, well, and I was aware that they were famous musicians, because there was a kind of, I remember Segovia, the
Guitarist.
And the guitarist, and Zabaleta, the Spanish harp player.
Wow.
Being around, and then just Marta Agaric was a young woman, and she stayed in my father's hostel, so she was around a lot. And
Wow.
people, all the famous people who are probably now 6 feet under would hang around our house, and there were big parties with tons of wonderful food.
Wow.
For after concerts, etc. And then there was my amazing and wonderful teacher, who I loved, my cello teacher, who actually my third cello teacher, William Pleath, who was just the big inspiration, and the big inspiration for chamber music, and particularly continuo playing. And it's interesting that his son also became a baroque cellist.
Oh, that is interesting. How many years did you take lessons with him?
8 years, 10 years, something like that. And at the beginning, he had just 3 students, 3 young students. So there was his son, Tony Pleath, there was me, and there was Jacqueline Dupré. So
at his house, or affiliated with conservatory, or?
No, just his house.
Just private. So
So every week I had to be told what Jackie had done that week.
Your age? Was she your age?
She's old. She was older.
She was older.
But not much. I think she was 5 years older, but that's big if you're 10 years old.
Famous young, right? She was
yeah.
So she was already, you would have known her when she...
Well, I think, when I started with him, I was 10, and so she was 15 or 16, I think.
So she was already making
the world. She was already...
She was on the world stage already.
On the world stage.
He was her main teacher?
Yeah.
And were you...
Well, Jackie learned the whole Elgar concerto this week. And there I am with my one Bach movement. Or whatever.
He- You tried to aspire to Jackie. She was so she might if she was older, maybe she was an influence. Your competition?
No, definitely not. I mean, she was as far as I was concerned at 10, she was an adult, right?
Yeah.
Like a really big girl.
Wow. Were you friends with her? Not
A
friends.
little bit. We were friendly.
Wow.
But
Was
I mean, very soon she was, on the international
she
scene. I mean, she was out of my life.
wow.
But I mean, I would see her performing, and
Well, did it inspire you to have a career in music because of her?
no, absolutely not. It never occurred to me I was going to have a career in music. What I really loved, even more than music, was drawing and painting.
I didn't know that about you. That's where Toby gets it from.
Jake.
Oh, it's Jake who's also, of course, but isn't that dinosaur picture?
Yeah, the dinosaur picture on my wall
is Jake or Toby? Yeah, Toby is what I thought.
But they're both. I mean, all three are artists.
Yeah.
So
then, okay, so you're taking cello lessons and piano lessons. It's a lot, double lessons. So many people do that to their.
I gave up piano. I mean, because the teacher said I had no talent. I gave it up. But then I mean, the cello was just part of my life, and I enjoyed it. And
you played with your father?
I played with my father.
And your brother on violin too?
No, he was at boarding school. We hardly crossed paths.
And you didn't go to boarding school because
I had a string quartet.
You had a string quartet?
I think from the age of 11.
Wow.
And we, of course, it was 4 11-year-olds with a. Well, I think the first violin was maybe an elderly 12. But I think he must have been a real prodigy. Anyway, we went around the country, just sweeping up all the prizes, because you have these tiny little kids playing Mozart and Beethoven.
Oh, cute. Do you have recordings?
No.
That's too bad. How come you didn't go to boarding school? Because you're a girl?
Because of the cello.
Oh. Because so they knew that it was something important. You were good enough that they were going to keep you.
I guess so.
And train
it's only me who didn't. I was 15 at my high school. We decided amongst ourselves in our class we were going to meet when we were 60 years old, unthinkable, in Trafalgar Square in the center of London at noon on the 20th of June.
Oh, wow. And
we actually, thankfully through Facebook, we managed. It was just a gradual thing. We spent 2 years collecting everyone. One of the things I remember about that meeting, when we were actually 62 in the end, was that the class said about me that there was a general feeling that I was really lucky, that I had no decisions to make. I knew what I was going to do, which was new to me. I never decided to become a musician. It just sort of happened, for lack of anything else. I wasn't particularly good at school. And I was really good at drawing and painting. But, that's not a public art. But I started actually playing professionally. And when I was 14 or 15, I got little gigs. And then by the age of 16, I was playing tons of contemporary music and theatrical productions, very hip London theatrical productions.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. When did it turn professional? But of
And
course,
I mean, I remember playing, first performances of Stockhausen and Ligetti and stuff like that.
wow.
Um,
But
and
those
it was
were the days.
exciting.
Those were the days you could make money with music. You
Exactly.
jingles, or they needed for the radio, or there was a play they needed. Just musicians were needed.
Yeah.
So I guess you started making money. So then you thought, okay, well, keep.
I didn't ever think.
They just asked you to play. You said, okay. You still do that. Someone asks you to play. You don't think,
Yeah.
okay.
And as you know, for money, no money.
Yeah.
If it's a thing, I do it.
Yeah. Okay, so now tell me about the path to Baroque, cello, and gamba.
Well, when I was 8 years old, as I said before, I heard
Verdi.
the opening to the Vespers on the BBC, what's now Radio 3. And I just thought, okay, this is it. This is the most exciting music I've ever heard, with those open strings and the bass.
For me, the most exciting I ever heard was when my high school teacher played us Palestrina. I thought that,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah.
And did you already play the flute?
I played flute, yeah. But when I heard that, I thought there's a whole other world there.
Did you think, I have to sing?
It didn't make me want to sing, but it made me want to only listen to Renaissance music.
Interesting.
And then Allegri and yeah.
Yeah. And did you hear any any instrumental music, flute music?
Not yet. The flute came to me because my teacher got frustrated with me because I was asking too many questions. Because I had some Ron Paul edition of Telemann Fantasias, and I said, but why would there be a slur there? Because Ron Paul put the slur there? Mika, you're asking too many questions. And then she said, go see but she had good advice. She said, go see the Baroque flute teacher, ask her. And I said, Baroque flute teacher? What? And then that was it. I never went back to the other lesson. It was over.
Amazing.
Yeah, because I touched the instrument and it resonated under my fingers. The wood vibrated. I played a low D and I thought, oh my God, this is for me. And I never touched my metal flute again.
Well, that's interesting because that's very similar to my beginnings with actual Baroque instruments. My father died and I received my beautiful viol in the mail.
So what year? What year is this?
We're talking 74.
74. Year I was born. How old were you?
Do
the math. You do the math.
I was 24. It's easy for me to know what age I am because I'm always the same age as the year.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I was born in the last day of 1949, so yeah. Most of.
But not really, because you count the
right.
Day. You were 24. Your father died. You were young.
He died when I was 22, and the instrument arrived when I was 24. So it was.
Tell the story. What do you mean the instrument arrived? You have to tell the story. Why there's.
Well, I mean, I inherited the use of the instrument.
Why that instrument? Why? Why was it set up like that? Interest in gamba?
Well, my father was a collector of fine art, especially Dutch, Flemish, 17th century art, and he bought all these instruments, thinking of me, obviously. So, beautiful cellos and viols. Well, beautiful cellos and one beautiful viol.
Wait, where did he get it? Do you know the story of where it came from and how he acquired it?
It was bought through a W.E. Hill, the dealer in London.
And because he spotted it was for sale, he spotted it and he.
Yes, I mean
But without having it in his.
We went to the St. Matthew and St. John Passions every year, at least 2 or 3 times for each. I mean, we went a lot
okay.
in London, and there was the gamba solo, and I think as far as they were concerned, that was viola da gamba music.
Yeah. And so he heard of an instrument that was for sale, but why wasn't it in your home? Like, why was it sitting?
No, it was in the home, but
Oh,
well, I mean, no, there's there's a story to that. So I did try playing it, and they got hold of the viol player who played the St. Matthew Passions, who had the most beautiful name in the world, Ambrose Gauntlet. I just think that is wonderful. He didn't look like an Ambrose Gauntlet the way I imagine Ambrose Gauntlet now. He was just a little old man, British man. Can imagine a little old man. And so I went to his house with the viol, and he immediately took out his scissors and cut off the frets because they were completely unnecessary, which is incredible when I think that he was playing those solos without frets. Really hard. But I mean, it was like a cello. And that it was annoying to have the frets.
wow. You had the proper bow?
The proper bow. There was a bow. There was a really shitty bow that went with it. So it was the bow that changed my life. So this viol arrives in California, where I was living at that point. And it was the day I had a recital of 3 Bach cello suites on my modern cello. So I thought, okay, I'll try the bow. And I put the bow to the strings and played a few bars of an allemande.
But this is without the frets, because the frets were off.
I'm playing the cello, not the
Oh,
viol.
the cello, okay.
I just tried what I was going to perform that night with the bow. And it was just I felt as though the sun came out. It was California, so maybe the sun did come out, but
the cello came with an original bow.
My musical sunshine came out because Bach just played itself with this shitty viol bow. It was so light, so I could do anything I wanted, I felt, and I played the concert with the bow that night. So that was my little first foray. And then
the bow, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the bow.
Well,
yeah,
I'm a string player, so I don't understand or grasp the importance.
Yeah, the bow is the essential.
Yeah.
You know, it's what you stir your soup with.
Yeah.
So yeah, and from then on, I immediately got a request to go and play Rameau on the viol in Vancouver, interestingly enough. And, you know, I'd never really played the viols. I'd heard of Rameau, but didn't know much about Rameau. So I had 2 months to learn.
But it's hard. Yeah, Rameau's hard.
Pieces. And I still have my copy of my Rameau part with a fingering on every single note. So I just threw myself in the deep end, and that's how I started the viol.
But at that point, you need to put the frets back on, and
yeah. Okay. And when I arrived in Vancouver for the first rehearsal, and we played, what do we play? The second movement of the first pièce de clavecin en concert. Anyway, it's the most exquisite, la livre, the most exquisite movement. And I just thought I'd gone to heaven and died. I had no idea this was what I was getting into. So I was completely sold. I was a complete baroque from that moment on.
Okay, yep. So this was your first thing on gamba. And when did baroque cello happened at the same time? Or
well, I mean, I had a wonderful modern cello that was built in 1698, so it was the perfect Venetian baroque cello. And I took it to Amsterdam, had it changed back into a baroque cello, which means changing the fingerboard, the sound post inside, the bass bar inside. It's a big operation. Mm. So that was done in 1980, I guess, or 81. That's when I did that.
Okay, and when did you stop performing on modern? Around then?
Oh, but by that time, I mean, soon after this Rameau experience, yeah. I was converted. I mean, it's like Hugh. It was an instant conversion,
And things were happening in those days. I mean, it was happening.
It was big time, and I'm soon after that I moved up to Vancouver, and we get for our little trio, we'd get 500-600 people every time.
Amazing.
But it was young hippies playing for young hippies. It was a granola movement.
And when did you move?
And it was so exciting because nobody had ever heard this music before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they hadn't heard the repertoire. It was also
exactly.
It wasn't just the instruments.
Yeah.
It was also new repertoire.
Yeah.
We explored that is so beautiful. How could you not like it? So
yeah,
then
I'm a generation before you, right? By the time you were doing it, there was at least a certain amount of research had been done, and
yeah,
the groundwork had been done.
Yeah, I was already like third generation, right? I took lessons with someone who took lessons with Bart already.
Yeah.
So right. I wasn't even direct, right? Because the generations with teachers are shorter than generations of
exactly generation, right?
But my conversion happened around the release of Tous les matins du monde. That happened at the same time.
Right.
So that was the explosion of when it became, well, if you want to use the word mainstream, it was never mainstream, but grand public was that movie. Changed a lot of people.
Yeah.
Europe, at least.
And for us here, Les Voix Humaines, I think we had something like 50 concerts of Tous les matins du monde music that year. It was just incredible.
Yeah, it did a lot for the movement.
I mean, and in a way, for me, that represents the beginning of the end, because it became mainstream. And then you got more and more of these kind of métis ensembles filled with modern violinists who just took up a violin for the occasion.
Right. And the disadvantage of being a third generation or a second generation is you were just given all the information. It was discovering it, because the discovering of it in and of itself led to something that you can't replicate, because this thirst for knowledge, because you were getting the knowledge yourself firsthand. I mean, those stories to me are incredible. Bart, when he was here for a concert, staying with me, was telling me just about him walking home and running into the museum and taking the flutes off the wall that were hung up on nails, like the mouth hole was hanging on a nail, getting wrecked, and he had them change it all and take them off the wall, and but just trying whatever he wanted to try. But it was the thirst for knowledge. It was a discovery, but the world was different, so access was different. Can't walk into a museum now and pluck something off a wall. Well,
I was just writing about the Harthouse vials and Harthouse and University of Toronto. There's this chest of vials that was bequeathed to Harthouse, and they were basically rotting in a big glass cabinet outside the wonderful alumni restaurant in the Harthouse. And I tried for several months to see if I could not at least save them, because they were getting cracks and they were in really bad shape. And finally, somebody in the office was really busy and said, look, I don't have time for this right now. If you want to come get them, you can. So I took a plane the next day and went with my very good friend, I'm at a viol player in Toronto, with all the cases we could find, because we weren't sure if there were cases at our house. And we felt like the great train robbers. We took all these instruments. We found a couple of cases in the attic, like completely covered with dust, and took the rest of our own cases and stole them out, shoved them in her car. She took me to Pearson Airport, and I immediately flew to New York.
Oh.
And organized with Bill Monacle, the wonderful luthier who's just died also. And he came and met me at the airport. And he knew the viols. He'd done a little work on them 30 years earlier.
And where are they now?
Well, there was a real problem anyway. They're back in their cabinet rotting, I'm sure.
That's how the story ends.
But we had them in Montreal after they were repaired. We had them for close to a year, I think, in the Purcell year in 2009, and we recorded, or 2008, I guess, we recorded the Purcell Fantasias using those amazing viols. Mm-hmm. So even here, it's possible.
It's possible, sort of.
As long as you do it surreptitiously. I don't know.
Tell me when you moved to, when did you move to, well, when did you meet Bruce?
I met Bruce in 1979. We were both teaching in California in a summer baroque music course. And I had to drive him up to this beautiful place in the Redwoods, Casadero. And yeah, we had an interesting first meeting, in fact, because we were living in these sort of elegant tents on frames and stuff. But the following morning I woke up and I had this ache in my crotch and I couldn't see, but I could feel lumps. And he was the only person around. And I said, look, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And so, he looked in my crotch and there were 8 huge ticks embedded.
Oh my God.
So luckily he was a pipe smoker and he had matches, but he had to entice each one out by burning its bum, right? They don't like that.
Oh my God. I didn't know that story. At least there wasn't Lyme disease yet.
No, we haven't heard of Lyme. I mean, who knows if there was Lyme disease, but I guess I didn't get it. Whatever.
And then,
so that's how I met Bruce.
And then you moved to Vancouver after that.
No, I was already in Vancouver.
Oh, you were already in Vancouver.
From 1975 on.
Oh, and you just met in California. He was living in California.
No, he was in The Hague.
He was already living in The Hague. And so what year then did you move to Montreal?
So we actually moved here in 84.
Wow.
What year did you get back? When did you move to McNider?
2003.
Okay, right.
I did CEGEP 92, 93. I did CEGEP, my second year CEGEP, I was allowed to do baroque flute. And then McGill, I did 2 years. And then ran away. and then came back.
with an accoutrement.
No, but I met Julien in 1989. We were at a music camp in the States. So I knew who he was. Actually, I fell in love with him in 1992 because he was playing a French suite. My favorite one on the piano, yeah.
Amazing.
And I burst in. I thought, you know that piece?
And did he ever fall in love with you?
I don't know. I kind of like forced him to play me. Like, whatever. He went along.
Right.
I have some questions. I was inspired by James Lipton, who was inspired by Bernard Pivot, who was inspired by Proust. And okay, ready? What do you consider your greatest achievement?
No question. 3 kids.
I knew you were going to say that. What is your most treasured possession?
3 kids. But I don't possess them, and I never felt like I possessed them, and I still don't feel like a mother. I mean, I just feel like an honored guest, having been invited
to witness their lives.
Yes. And to give birth.
And then have another generation. You have 2 grandchildren. That's an achievement too. What is it that you most dislike?
Conflict between musicians. I hate that.
What is your greatest fear?
Do I have a fear? I guess
Squirrels.
squirrels.
Taking over your house, moving on the inside, not just staying in the room.
Exactly.
Or in the basement, or in the extra room.
Well, you know, I look outside in the morning, and I often see the raton laveur climbing the ladder and stuff. And I think they're going to get in. There's no question.
Okay. Is classical music dead?
Oh, totally not.
What is your greatest extravagance?
My greatest extravagance, I think I would say, is actually going to fabulous restaurants in France. Worth every penny.
Is early music dead?
Oh, absolutely not. But everything's changing now. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see how online lives affect the future.
It will be amazing because it could go either way. It could be very positive and very negative.
Yeah.
If you were to die and come back as a person or thing, what do you think it would be?
It would be, interesting question. I would like to be something that can observe and be pretty much unseen and live for a long time. What kind of a bug would that be?
I was going to say fly until you said live for a long time.
Yeah, no, I'd want to see how things develop. Maybe a ghost.
That's a good one. Like that might happen.
Yeah.
If heaven or hell exists, What composer would you meet and what would you say to them when introduced?
Well, I mean, the obvious person would be Bach, but maybe I'd rather meet somebody more obscure whose music I absolutely adore.
Well, Monteverdi
or Couperin.
It's funny, Bach comes to mind also because there's something mysterious or elusive about him as a person.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Susie. It was such a pleasure and honor and wonderful as always.
You have to tell me who you'd like to come back as.
Person or thing. I think I just like to come back as a rock.
A rock forever.
Yeah, feel the wind get worn down, become smooth. It would last a long time, and it doesn't need to make any decisions.
It's true.
I think I've been making too many decisions lately.
Yeah.
Carry too much responsibility for too many
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
That I want to be a rock. Yeah.
Well, I'll come sit on you as it goes.
Okay. This was fun.
Yeah. Okay.
So have a good day.
Yeah. You too.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.